All right, just as a disclaimer, I did tell Pastor Conrad how terribly irresponsible I am and highly unqualified I am to do this. And somehow, here I stand. But let's pray. Father, thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for the good things and the bad things and your love and the forgiveness that you give to us every day, even though we don't deserve it. Father, thank you for you. Be with me, speak through me, and if there is someone here who needs to hear it, let their ears hear it. We love you and everything that you do for us. Amen. All right, so recently it has been made pretty clear to me by several people that the best way to spread God's word is through our experiences and our personal testimonies. And I had planned on sharing a little bit of my testimony, but the more this date got closer and closer, because he told me forever ago that this was going to happen, I've just been soaking in this anxiety. And so I kind of changed things up after talking to Conrad a little bit, so I'm going to give you a lot more of my testimony than I anticipated. So this is kind of on a whim, but I'm not trying to tell you things to make you feel bad for me or give you pity, because looking back now, bad things have not happened to me. My life is amazing. I'm celebrating 6 years of marriage today. Like this has been an amazing 6 years for me. It's been an okay 6 years for her. And I'm blessed, right? And the only way that's possible is through our Father's forgiveness and His love. Unfailing love. But we'll get into it. So, approximately 28 years ago, I was brought into this world. Most of you already know that I was adopted. The parents who brought me into this world didn't really anticipate the rest of that. So they had their own, decisions to make, and they chose drugs. They were very abusive, and my early childhood was pretty difficult, right up until they left. And we were at this crack house for a few days, several days, until this lady realized my parents weren't coming back and CPS was going to pick us up. And she was like, well, that can't happen because we're watching Portia's kids. So she called her sister, who came, picked us up, and she called my grandpa, who came and then picked us up. We started living with my grandma and my aunt. And at that moment, you would assume that everything thereon was hunky-dory. However, that was not God's plan. I was raised very well by my parents. You know them. You probably know that. And they loved me. I didn't feel that love. That was not their fault. It was my perspective. I grew up thinking that I couldn't be loved. I had a second dad at one point, which some of you know about, some of you don't. Not the best. That was my second dad, not a good dad. My third dad came along when I was in 9th grade, and he got the short end of the stick. He was good at it. I was not ready to be a son. I had learned that, that male person is probably not ever going to be there, right? And as I was growing up in their house, his son ended up molesting me, which kind of makes you just feel disgusting, And I'm living this life, and my parents don't want me, and I feel gross, and you just grow and grow, and I'm angry and angry and angry all the time, and I can't not be angry. So when mom says, you have to go to church today, and I explode because I can't hold it in, and I get so mad. And then I don't get any better, and I start coming to youth group here, and my life starts to get a little better, right? And I'm like, whoa, the crap's over. The crap is over. Good. And then I was like 17, and my girlfriend broke up with me, and my grandpa got really sick, and my best friend got really, really sick, and they were going to die. And I remember just thinking like, man, I thought this crap was over, And at that moment, I made the decision. People don't love me. I'm totally unlovable. Even God doesn't care. He can't. If God cared about me, he would never make stuff like that happen. He couldn't. How could he? He doesn't care. No one else has cared, then that's just how it is. So I started my own life. If no one cared about me, then realistically, I can do whatever it is that I want to do. If I'm bound for hell, no matter what, it doesn't matter. So I got into drugs pretty quickly, like rapidly went into drugs. I was not an addict. I see how people have struggled with addiction, and it would be unfair for me to say that I was addicted. I was addicted to partying, having a good time, and trying to get my feelings away. I started doing even worse things. We led into thieving, lying, hurting people, fighting people, pointing guns at people, and hating people. I hated people. I wanted you to know that I hated you. If I came in contact with you, I hated you. I didn't care. I never felt love, right? And I got to this point where, because of all this stupid decisions that I have made and all this crap that I had gone through and all this stuff, I was done. So I was going to end it. And I went up to the top of a parking garage, and I sat on the edge of that parking garage, and I was going to take that step. And then my phone rang. I got off that ledge. It was a friend of mine who I hadn't talked to in about a year and a half, and he said, "Hey man, how you doing?" I said, "I'm going to kill myself. What are you doing?" And he said, "No man, you can't do that." "Why not?" He said, "You're strong." And no. I remember getting off the ledge and looking up in the sky and said, "Fine. If I'm not allowed to kill myself, then I'm going to do things so it's inevitable, and I will die, because I can't do this anymore." I started walking across streets and highways with my eyes closed and dangling from buildings. I wanted it, and it never happened. I did way more drugs than I should have. I drank way too much than I should have, and I partied too much. I stopped caring about everything. And when I realized how terrible of a person I was, I decided maybe I should go get new friends, or I should distance myself from these people, because I was awful. I felt so terrible about myself. I hated me more than any of you. And as I came back to Huntington, I thought, well, I'll just stay at my mom's house. It's comfortable there. That didn't last long. My mom realized I wasn't not really good company. So she said, "See ya. You're not welcome here right now." That was probably the right thing to do. I started playing basketball for money, stealing from cars, stealing from houses, selling drugs so I could make money. Sometimes I'd stay at people's houses. If it wasn't too bad, I'd sleep outside. And this is how it was, you know. And then one day, I met Vinny, playing basketball. That was the beginning of my entire life changing. And I didn't even know it yet. And as we got to know each other and things move on and we create a relationship with each other, and she ends up getting pregnant. And I'm like, nope, not me. I'm out. I went on like a 3-month bender, gonzo. She showed up at my door. I don't even know how she found me. And she said, "Hey, you're not going to do this." And I said, "How did you find me?" And she said, "Don't worry about it. You're coming with me." Okay? And I said, "Fine. We can do this boyfriend-girlfriend thing if you really want to, but I'm not going to love you. I'm not going to like you. I don't want to spend time with you. I'm not going to miss you." Because that's what I knew for those first 20 years of my life. And shortly, I got a job, which was a new experience for me. I was always a hard worker, but holding an actual job for any anticipated amount of time because I had someone to provide for, not my thing. But more my thing now than what it used to be. And I started working, and Emery was born, and she was about a month alive, almost. She was born April 25th. I went to jail May 19th. In jail, wasn't in jail very long. I learned real quick that I didn't want to be like that. I learned that my whole life had been about compromising principles, compromising all these things that I said I'd never do. I'd never steal. I wouldn't do it. Well, I'll only steal from big corporations. Well, I'll only steal from like stores and stuff. They got the money. Well, I'll only steal from strangers. Well, I'll only steal from kind of friends. Well, I'll only steal from friends. I compromised my principles. When I was in jail, I realized I compromised my final principle. I was just like my dad. I was sitting in jail where I had a kid and somebody who loved me on the outside. I was just like my dad. And then that hit me like a ton of bricks, and I prayed. I said, God, I need you. I need you. And I don't want to die anymore, but I need to be different. I want to change. I want to be different. And I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. And he said, okay. And I got out of jail and I told Vinny that same thing. He said, Vinny, I want to go to church. He said, okay. So we started going to a Catholic church. It was awful. Terrible. I hated it. Every minute. It was like I went there and I was going there to be judged. I didn't like that. I didn't fit in. I wasn't able to take communion, and I kind of just sat there by myself. I didn't like that. I said, Vinny, do you think that we can go to the church that I grew up in? I know those people. I'm comfortable there. Can we do that? She said, yeah. It's okay. And trust me, I thought you guys were going to be like, oh boy, you know? But actually the opposite happened. You showed me that you cared. You showed me that you loved me. That was new. So now I got those people that love me, and I got my family that loves me, and I got you guys that love me. That is God. That is God, all right? People think that because I was able to go to a foreign country for 4 years, that I must be some type of powerhouse. I'm telling you, I'm not. I am weak, and I am broken and worthless and disgusting by myself. But with God, I am an unbreakable, invincible, amazing, on fire, washed clean, forgiven. I learned forgiveness at Brethren Way of Christ. Shout out to Rich and Maggie, because they asked me like 38 times before I went. They never gave up, which is biblical. You keep asking, and the person will finally do it. And that's what they did. And when I went there, I also hated that. It was awful. I didn't like it. It was like going to school for big kids. It was worse. And they just talk and give these stories and testimonies. Testimonies are cool, but I don't like sitting. I don't like being idle. And then it got to the last night, right? And that night, they pass out these sticky notes, and they're like, all right, write down on that sticky note everything that you can't forgive yourself for. And I'm like, I'm going to need a book. And, you know, I write down, and then my chicken scratch, no one could read this, you know, I'm just writing it down, jotting all this stuff down, everything that I can think of. The pack of gum I stole when I was 5. I'm like, terrible, I'm going to die or something. And I'm just writing this stuff down. He said, okay, come up, nail it to the cross. You nail it to the cross, right? And he said, okay, if you want, you can talk to one of the pastors here. We'll pray with you and anoint you with oil. And I said, yeah, I'm going to need to do that. So I went to Conrad, and I confessed everything to him. And I cried. I'm not a big crier. I don't cry often. But that was an ugly cry. And I don't mean like it was like a noble, like my chin was high and I had tears in my eyes. It's not how it was. I mean, I was drooling and kind of crying. It was rough, okay? And it was gross. And it was drool and slobber everywhere. And then we took it out, that cross, we took it out. We took all the Post-it notes off the cross. We put it in a bucket and set the bucket on fire. And at that moment, I don't know what it was, I felt good. I felt peace. I felt forgiveness, right? I'd never felt like that before. And it was really easy for me to forgive these people that hurt me, these people that molested me, or these people that beat me, or these people that left me. It was easy to forget that. And then I thought about myself and how gross that I was and terrible that I am. And I realized, oh, never mind. No way could God forgive me. Why would he forgive me? Right? Wrong. Conrad told this story. I call it the rooster story. Maybe it's got a name or a real title. It might. I don't know. But the rooster story goes a bit like this. There was a man who had prize-winning roosters. I mean, he loved them. He had this one rooster, got blue ribbon every time they took it to the festival. Well, son got a new truck on his 16th birthday, and he's so happy, and he's driving through their drive down the gravel, and the rooster walked out, and he hit the rooster, killed it dead. His dad's most prized possession. Man, this kid felt terrible, right? Felt so bad. I'm so sorry, Dad. I've killed your rooster. And Dad said, you know what, son? I forgive you. Go bury it in the yard. Son said, okay, seems pretty easy, right? So he did. And he went and he buried that rooster. Well, a couple days goes by. And he's just feeling terrible. He feels so bad. So he goes back to the yard and he unburies the rooster and digs it up. And he says, hey, Dad, that just wasn't enough. I'm so sorry. What can I do to make this up for you? And his dad says, no, it's okay. I've forgiven you. I totally forgot about that. Just go bury it in the yard. Okay. His son did it again. Well, you can imagine it happens a few times, right? And then the dad finally says, son, every time you bury that and you put it behind us, you put it behind the house, you bury it in the yard, you don't need to dig it up. Every time you dig it up, you are reminding God. You're reminding God of that. He was reminding his father that he killed his rooster every day. We need to stop doing that. We got to forgive. We have to let go as our Father lets go. He is forgiven and forgotten. He said, you're washed clean. You are washed clean. That's so important, y'all. It's so important. Conrad told that story and they brought out a bunch of letters. And some of those letters were from some of you. Some of those letters were from complete strangers. 3 wooden roosters fell out of those letters. I was like, okay, you're probably trying to tell me something. And also, it was like 6 or 7 of those letters mentioned in it, don't dig up your roosters. That moment, at that point in my life, I was always praying to God, you can't give me code, right? I'm done. I'm not going to pick up on that. I won't. You have to blatantly tell me. And if that wasn't blatant enough, I don't know what could have been. Stop digging up your rooster. Stop bringing up your past. That's my little bit of testimony that I got for you. And 2 verses. Turns out there are a lot of verses on forgiveness in this book. A lot. There are 2 in particular that stuck out to me. Shout out to Mom. She gave me one of them. It was Colossians 3:12 through 13. It says, therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you. That goes for every person in this room. That goes for every person outside of this room. That goes for yourselves. That goes for your friends and your enemies and every person that has ever hurt you. Those people that have molested you, those people that have hit you, those people that have left you, they deserve that forgiveness, your forgiveness. They don't deserve God's forgiveness, but He gave it to them. He gave it to them. He gave it to you, and it is our job. He blatantly tells us, you must forgive as your Lord forgives you. You have to do it. And I cannot explain to you how happy you can be if you can forgive. God is always telling us things in this book that we're supposed to do, and some of it is for our internal life, But all of this also helps in our everyday life. Every single day, if you learn to forgive those people that hurt you, you will not worry about it. You won't. You will not be depressed because someone has hurt you, because you have moved on. You have forgiven. You don't have to worry about that. The same is true if you can forgive yourself. You don't have to hold on to that any longer. God took it from you, and He wants you to drop it as well. He washed you clean. He loves you. I cannot explain how much He loves you. Now, I promise you that I'm a new person because I used to hate, but now I love you. I love you, and I love everyone out there. I do it. I do, and that is because of God's love, and that is because of God's forgiveness. I struggle forgiving. I certainly still struggle forgiving myself. I'm going to sin today, and I'm going to beat myself up. I know I will. And God is still going to be there, and He's going to say, no, I have forgiven you. You must do the same. Because He loves me. And And he loves you. My whole life is that. And my life counts literally as nothing. My life is nothing if I didn't have that. Your lives is nothing. Your lives are nothing if you don't have the unfailing forgiveness of God and unfailing love of God. It won't fail. It won't. He loves you that much. We're called to love our neighbors that much. If you cannot forgive your neighbors, you're not loving them. That's another commandment. God told you, love your neighbors as yourself. He told you to do it. He's the boss. It's your job. Do it. Forgive them. Love them. Do everything that you can for them. Forgiveness is huge, and it can change your life. Jesus tells us to do it for a reason. He has chosen us. In that verse, he tells us that we are God's chosen people. Paul's writing this verse. That's a big deal. God didn't just have a group of people and decided that they were going to do something. He chose each and every one of us individually. He said, Rich, I got a job for you. And you were called to be humble and gentle and patient and kind and compassionate and forgiving and loving. And he said that to Terry and Matt and Grandma and Steve and everybody in this room. He told you, he elected you to do it, to live that way. You have to. It's your job. He chose you to do it. How great our God is. He is all-powerful, all-knowing, always present, always. And he chose you. He chose you out of 8 billion people. He elected you to do his job. We have to love everyone that way. The other verse that stuck out to me was Psalm 103, 11 and 12. This is a really big one, especially after I started looking into it, because this one pretty much saves all of us, right? It says, "For as high as the heavens are above the earth, so great is his love for those who fear him. As far as the east is from the west, so far has he removed our transgressions from us." That's a big deal, okay? And there is in no way David knew that going east and west, you would never, ever meet. You can travel east forever and never meet west. But if you go north, you will eventually start heading south. The same is true for south and north. David could have never known that. He couldn't have. That right there is divine guidance. God wrote that using David. That's a big deal. It's also a big deal because what that means is all that crap and all those terrible things that I've done are gone. I can't even get to them because my Father in heaven, my Jesus, he said, I got you. Let me intercede for you. Let me wash you with my blood, and you'll never be able to get to your sins again. You can't. I'm going to sin. But you know what? I'm going to be forgiven, and he's going to take it from me. So far that I can't reach it. So far that I can't reach it. That is true for each and every person that fears him, that gives their life to him, that loves him. That's true for them. That is true for them. That's true for you guys. And if that is true for every person that does that, then every person that has given that love to Christ or given their life to Christ in that way or accepted in their heart Jesus, you are also called to have that type of forgiveness. You are called to forgive the way your Father forgives you, which means if my grandma spanked me one time and I was really hurt, no, I forgive grandma. And I will never bring it up again because it's gone. It's back there. We can't get to it. It's that big of a deal. And it is literally written by God. David couldn't have just known that. He didn't walk the earth. He was pretty stuck in one area. They didn't get around much. So, through those two verses and the knowledge and the experiences that I have had the pleasure of having in my life, there are these terrible things and people look at and these terrible things, and I'm telling you that ain't one of them was bad. There wasn't. In my humble opinion, I don't think bad things happen. Because God can use anything to further his kingdom. God can get good out of anything, literally anything, because he knows. You think this isn't a part of his plan? You think that crap that I did wasn't a part of his plan? You think that crap that happened to me wasn't a part of his plan? Yeah, right. If it helped one person, if one person heard it, if there was one kid in the Dominican, if there was one Dominican I talked to and it helped, it was worth it, and I'd do it again 100 times. One person makes it worth it. One person in heaven, everyone's cheering. It makes it worth it. It couldn't have been bad if one person got there. Does that make sense? It's so good. The disciples get out of prison. What do? Oh, guys, we went to prison. Yeah. They were happy because they suffered. If you're suffering, it's because God was like, you can do it. Yep. He was like, Lindsay, you got this. You're going to go through a tough one today, but you got it. I'm going to be with you. He says that to us literally all the time. But most of the time, our thinking is, why did you do this to me? That is faulty. That is the wrong way to think. We need to be more like those disciples and the apostles who said, thank you, God, for this pain, because I can't imagine what I'm going to learn from it. I've learned amazing things, guys. I've learned how to love people. That's a good feeling. That is a good feeling. I've learned how to forgive people. I still struggle, for sure. I struggle with the forgetting thing. I got a weird memory. But I have learned that. I've learned so much patience. Oh my gosh, I've learned so much patience. I'm still struggling. Like, so much patience is like this much for me. But that's where I'm at, right? God is always teaching, forever teaching. I don't care. Grandma, she's like 300 or 400 years old. God is still teaching her. We just sat right there and we talked about it, that God is still teaching her. She didn't know that I was going to mention this. God is teaching her. She's ancient. God is teaching you all the time. You will never know as much as God does. And our perspective will never be what God's perspective is. It can't be. We're itty-bitty, and he's always. He sees it in a way that we can't. So when those bad things happen to us and we say, oh, this is bad. No, God's up there and he's like, yeah, you just wait. You just wait. And you'll know it's not all that bad. And I know a lot of people are like, well, that guy's so terrible. Jerry, he was a thief. He's terrible, dude. He hurt people. What an awful, disgusting man. That's a fair point. Sure. Except Jesus died on that cross willingly. Also, he died on that cross knowing that I was going to know he died on a cross and I was still going to sin. See, I put Jesus on that cross. You guys put Jesus on that cross. It was not the Pharisees and the Sadducees. It was a collective group effort of every one of us. And he knew it. And he said, the only way I can do that is by climbing on that cross. Then I know, Jerry, I know you're going to sin. I know you're going to have a porn addiction. I know you're going to do drugs, and I know you're going to hurt people. I know it. I know you will. And I know that Doug's going to be addicted, and I know that Rich is going to sin and Steve's going to sin. I know that's going to happen. But I love you, and I would do anything to get you back. And that means crucifixion. That's what it meant for him. Such a terrible thing. Such a terrible thing. They had to make up a word to describe it. Excruciating. That's the only way they could imagine describing crucifixion. And he did it willingly, knowing we were going to make mistakes, knowing we were going to screw up. He did it willingly because he loves you. He loves you. I wish you guys felt it like I did. I hope you feel it like I do, because I love him and he loves me, and he has filled me up, man. He has filled me up, and he does it all the time, even when I'm not paying attention. Oh, I drift, man. I drift hard. I got a boat with a motor on it that drifts me away. I do. I don't care. And he'll always come back. He with a lasso pulls me right back in. I'm like, you're right. Sorry. I was just, confused for a second. But it is like that. And Jesus knew it was going to be like that. And because he knew it was going to be like that, he made the ultimate sacrifice of love, humility, and forgiveness. And he saved each and every one of us. And something that seems like it was terrible actually turns out to probably be the greatest event in human history. Something in our perspective is so terrible. Crucifixion. Awful. Saved humanity. Saved us. Eternally saved humanity. Because bad things don't happen, guys. All right. I love you.